SLT Mobitel, the connection. SLT Mobitel, the connection.
ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50ට අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Tonight, overstepping the mark, Sri Lanka outright rejects the UN Human Rights Commissioner's damning report, citing a lack of evidence and mandate. The cost of immunity. State Minister says measures underway to purchase 18 million vaccine doses at a cost of 10 billion rupees. Diplomatic pressure. Indian and Japanese envoys meets with the country's leadership following the government's ECT move and says later that cooperation must keep mutual interests in mind.
All of us are serving our people. All the people of our diverse countries. And therefore, it is very important that when we plan our activities, we keep that in our mind.
All this and much more coming up on this Wednesday, the 3rd of February 2021.
Buy a 2-litre Coke and get a glass free.
ඇල්කොහොල් අඩංගු hand sanitizer භාවිත කරන්න. ලෙඩ රෝග ඇති කරන විෂ බීජවලට එරෙහිව සටන් කරන්න. හඳුන්වා දීමේ මිල රුපියල් 350යි.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Shanella Fernando. Moving on to your top stories for tonight. The government has officially rejected the report tabled by UNHRC Commissioner Michelle Bachelet, citing lack of evidence and a clear contravention of the Commissioner's mandate when drafting the report. This was announced by Minister of Energy Udaya Manpila at a media briefing held today. The minister added that the full response will be delivered by Foreign Minister Dinesh Gunawardena when he addresses the Council in due course.
The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights presented a report on the human rights situation in Sri Lanka on January 27th. The report stated that Sri Lanka was on a dangerous path towards serious human rights violations once again. Nearly 12 years after the end of the civil conflict, the report alleges that Sri Lanka has repeatedly failed to deliver results from domestic initiatives for accountability and reconciliation. With that, Minister Udaya Manpila stated today that the Sri Lankan government has decided to reject the report of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights.
එක්සත් ජාතීන්ගේ මානව හිමිකම් කොමසාරිස්වරයා ඉදිරිපත් කර වාර්තා පිළිබඳ ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ ප්‍රතිචාරය ලිඛිතව දැනුම් දීලා තියෙනවා. එහි අන්තර්ගතයේ ප්‍රසිද්ධ නොකරන්නේ එය දිනේෂ් ගුණවර්ධන විදේශ අමාත්‍යතුමන් විසින් සමුළුව වීඩියෝ තාක්ෂණය ඔස්සේ අමතන අවස්ථාවේදී ප්‍රසිද්ධ කිරීම තමයි ආණ්ඩුවේ තීන්දුව. සංකල්පීය වශයෙන් කිව්වොත් අයි ප්‍රධාන කාරණා දෙකක් කියලා තියෙනවා. එකක් මේ වාර්තාව මහා කොමසාරිස්වරයට 31 සහ 41 කියන යෝජනාවලින් ලබා දුන්නු විෂයපතේට පටහැනිවයි වාර්තාව සකස් කළා තියෙන්නේ. පිටු 17 මාරක් වන වාර්තාවෙන් පිටු 2මාරයි තමන්ගේ විෂයපතේට අදාළ ලියලා තියෙන්නේ. අනිත් ඒවා තමන්ගේ විෂයපතේට පටහැනිව වර්තමාන ආණ්ඩුව පිළිබඳ දිවේශාගත ආකාරයේ වාර්තාවක් තමයි සකස් කර තියෙන්නේ. වාර්තාවේ නගා ඇති චෝදනා පිළිබඳ කිසිම පිළිගත හැකි සාක්ෂියක් ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න, ඒ සාක්ෂි ගැන තමන්ගේ මූලාශ්‍ර සඳහන් කරන්න මානව හිමිකම් කොමසාරිස්වරිය අසමත් වෙලා තියෙනවා. මෙන්න මේ කාරණා දෙකම පදනම් කරගෙන මේ වාර්තාව ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරන්න ආණ්ඩුව තීරණය කළා තියෙනවා.
Meanwhile, SLPP MP SP Disanayake accused the UN Human Rights Council and Sri Lanka's own Tamil politicians of being silent during serious human rights violations by the LTTE against the Tamil population.
හමුදාවේ අයට විවිධ චෝදනා එල්ල කරමින් දැන් යුත අපරාධ ගොන්නක් හරිගස්සලා අපි ජාත්‍යන්තර අධිකරණයට ගෙනියන්න තමයි මේ කවුන්සිල් එකේදී මේ සැරේ උත්සාහ කරන්නේ. මම තමුන් සංස්ලාගේ ගහන්නේ. මේ අද කතා කරන ද්‍රවිඩ දේශපාලන පක්ෂවල එක්කෙනෙක්. ඇතමිට ඔවුන්ගේම පක්ෂ. හෙලෝ සංවිධානයේ ඊරෝස් සංවිධානයේ EPDP සංවිධානයේ EPR ලබ් සංවිධානයේ දිකට හරහට ප්‍රභාකරන් ඝාතනය කරනකොට මේවා ගැන වචනයක් ඔය සම්බන්ධ නැතුළු ඔය එක නායකයෙක් එක වචනයක් එදා කතා කරා. මේ මානව හිමිකම් කවුන්සිලේ කොහෙද ඒ කාලේ තිබ්බේ? මේ මානව හිමිකම් කවුන්සිලේට මේක පෙනුන්නේ නැද්ද? මේ Human Rights Watch ජාත්‍යන්තර මේ මානව අයිතිවාසිකම් ගැන මහාවට කෑ ගහන අය කොහෙද හිටියේ? අරන්තලාවේ භික්ෂූන් 60 ගාණක් ගිලා අමුවේ ඝාතනය කරා. මේ කවුන්සිල් එක දැක්කේ නැද්ද ඒක? සම්බන්ධට ඇත්තටම නිකන්වත් ඒ වැඩේ නම් කැතයි කියලා කියන්න හිතුන්නේ නැද්ද? යුද්ධයේ තීරණාත්මක මොහොතේ ඔබතුමාලා දන්නවා මාවිල්ලාරු ජලය වහලා ගොවිපවුල් එකක් දෙකක් තුනක් හතරක් නෙවෙයි. ගොවිපවුල් 30000කට මිනිස්සුන්ගේ ජීවන ක්‍රමය නැති කිරීමයි කරේ. ඒක මානව හිමිකම් උල්ලංඝනය කිරීමක් නෙවෙයිද? කවුන්සිල් එකේ ඒක දැක්කේ නැද්ද? ඔය උතුරේ ද්‍රවිඩ දේශපාලන නායකයෝ ඒක දැක්කේ නැද්ද? ඒ අන්තිම මොහොතේ උතුරේ මැරිච්ච අහිංසක දෙමළ ජනතාව උතුරේ මැරිච්ච LTT එකේ ද්‍රවිඩ තරුණයෝ වෙඩි කෑවේ ප්‍රභාකරන්ගෙන් වෙඩි කෑවේ LTT එකෙන්මයි. ඒ සමම කියන්න කැමති මේක මහා විලිලැජ්ජා නැති අසික්කිත කැත පිළිකුල් සාගත වැඩපිළිවෙලක් තමයි මේ ජාත්‍යන්තර මානව හිමිකම් කවුන්සිලයේ මේ සැරේ මේ ගෙනියන්න යන වැඩපිළිවෙල.
Pay just 500,000 rupees to reserve your unit today. Mulberry Residence.
Following the government's decision reversal on the proposed East Container Terminal deal with India and Japan, Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka Gopal Bagle called on the President, Prime Minister and Foreign Minister yesterday to discuss the matter. On Monday, the Cabinet unanimously approved the retention of the East Container Terminal by the Ports Authority. The government's decision also prompted an audience between the Japanese ambassador and the Foreign Minister today. In the face of opposition from the trade unions and the clergy, the government decided to reverse its decision to hand over a 49% stake of the Colombo Port's East Container Terminal to Indian and Japanese investors and to operate the terminal as a wholly owned SLPA venture. However, the West Terminal of the Colombo Port has been proposed for development under a private-public partnership with 85% shares in the hands of Indian and Japanese investors. In such a backdrop, Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka Gopal Bagle has met with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and Foreign Minister Dinesh Gunawardena last night. According to reports, the Indian government's concerns regarding the East Container Terminal were the focus of discussions. Quoting official sources, Indian news outlet The Hindu reported that the thrust of the Indian envoy's message to the Sri Lankan leadership was that Colombo must adhere to its commitments in the tripartite agreement of May 2019 to jointly develop the strategic terminal with the Sri Lanka Ports Authority holding 51% and India and Japan 49% together. The media outlet added that, quote, the development has sparked alarm in India and Japan, who have stated that Sri Lanka had neither conveyed its decision nor offered the alternative proposal to either of the partners, unquote. Meanwhile, Japanese ambassador to Sri Lanka Akira Sugiyama met with Foreign Minister Dinesh Gunawardena today. The duo have discussed a range of matters relevant to the bilateral relationship between the two countries. In the meantime, the US ambassador to Sri Lanka, Elena B. Teplitz, called on the foreign minister yesterday. During the meeting, an array of issues, including diplomatic and economic matters that are vital to both countries, were apparently discussed. In the meantime, the matter was discussed during a meeting convened by 10 political parties from both the government and opposition, who came forward to protect the East Container Terminal.
අමරිකානු තානාපති කාර්යාලයෙන් මේ වෙලාවේ මේකට හොට දාලා තියෙනවා. මේ ඕන්ට අයිති නැති වැඩක්. අධිරාජ්‍යවාදීන්ගේ උවමනාව මේ යෝජනා කර තිබූ වැඩපිළිවෙලත් එක්ක ගැට ගැසී තිබුණයි කියන එක ඒ අනුව සැක කරන්න හිතනවා.
අද රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්තයා භූදේශපාලනය ගැන කතා කරනවා. එතුමාට කිසි අයිතියක් නැහැ මේ ගැන කතා කරන්න. මොකද හේතුව 2015 තමයි මේ නැගින්ර ජැට්ටිය තුරු කොටස් ටික සංවර්ධනය කරන්න ටෙන්ඩර් කැඳවීමක්. ඔබට මතක ඇති कंपनी 7ක් ආව මේ ටෙන්ඩර් එකට. ඒකේ තිබුණා ලෝකේ තියෙන දැවැන්තම shipping companies. නමුත් මේ ආපු ටෙන්ඩර් එක ඕපන් කරන්නේ නැතුව තුන් පාරක් රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්තයාගේ ඒ ආර්ථික කමිටුව විසින් මේකේ යෝජනා සම්පූර්ණයෙන් වෙනස් කෙරුවා. එක එක විදියට. මේ විදියට එක එක්කෙනා මේ ටෙන්ඩර් 7 දෙනාම එකින් එක අයින් කරුවා. කඩාකප්පල් කරලා දාලා තමයි ඉන්දියාවත් ජපානයත් එකතු කරගෙන මේ ආයෝජන අවස්ථාව හදාගන්න පුළුවන් වැඩපිළිවෙල සකස් කරගන්න. මේක භූදේශපාලනික වැඩපිළිවෙලකට ගෙනාව රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්තයා. ඇත්ත වශයෙන් ඉන්දියාව මෙතෙන්ට මැදිහත් වෙන්නේ රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්තයා කරපු ඒ විකාර වැඩසටහනේ ප්‍රතිඵලයක් විදියට.
ඒ වගේම මේ පක්ෂ 10 එකට එකතු වුණේ නැගෙනහිර ජැටිය බේරගන්න විතරක් නෙවෙයි. මව්බිම අනතුරට වැටෙන ඕනෑම අවස්ථාවක මේ සමගියේ මේලසීම තබාගෙන රට රකින්න පෞරක් ලෙස කටයුතු කරන්න අපි ලෑස්ති කියන පණිවිඩයක් අපි අද ජාතිය හමුවේ තියෙනවා.
දක්ෂිනායකයන්ගේ මේ කියන වාතාවරණයේ තුලදී ඔහුගේ හැසිරීම
එතුමා හිටිය අමාත්‍ය මණ්ඩලයේ අනුමැතියෙන් තමයි 2017 අප්‍රේල් 25 වෙනිදාත් 2019 මැයි 28 වෙනිදාත් නැගෙනහිර පර්යන්තයේ ඉන්දියාවට ලබා දීමේ ගිවිසුම් වලට එළඹුණේ. ඉතින් එතුමන්ලගේ තීන්දුවක්. ඒකින්ද එතුමාට ඒක විවේචනය කරන්නත් බෑ. ඊළඟට රටේ ජනමතය දැක්කම විවේචනය නොකර ඉන්නත් බෑ. ඒ නිසා අද විපක්ෂ නායකතුමා ඉන්නේ මග හිටියොත් ඕනසී, ගෙදර ගියොත් අඹුනසී වගේ තත්ත්වයක.
Indian High Commissioner Gopal Bagle says that it is of vital importance that Sri Lanka and India keep in mind the needs of the people and the country's mutual interest in all manner of bilateral cooperation. The Indian High Commissioner paid tribute to the exemplary cooperation displayed between the countries' militaries during times of crisis and promised to further such partnerships between the two countries.
It's a matter of encouragement that when we had tried to overcome the difficulties posed by the challenges of COVID, we have had a great partner in Sri Lanka all through. In today's world, when India and Sri Lanka are the closest friends and neighbors, they look at our environment. We see not only millennia-old traditional friendship and the close people-to-people ties between us, but also common challenges which exist around us in our environment, to our security, to furthering the common aspirations of peace and prosperity for our people. And in order to meet these challenges adequately, it becomes very important for us to provide the background, to provide the substratum, to provide the environment and enabling and facilitating environment for cooperation between the men in uniform and their leaders. Mutual training, joint exercises is one such thing, but also responding jointly to challenges that suddenly emerge. For example, the fire on MT New Diamond, which happened last year, and exemplary cooperation between the forces of the two countries. And I'm very glad that we were able to put together such cooperation through unstinted and seamless coordination between the coast guards and the navies and the governments of the two countries. So that is one glorious example of what the cooperation between the two countries can do. But at the end of the day, all of us are serving our people. All the people of our diverse countries. And therefore, it is very important that when we plan our activities, we keep that in our mind. India and Sri Lanka have an exemplary cooperation in responding to crisis and difficulties. We consider it as a duty. And it's not merely the matter of duty, but the matter of values that we share. And that's what we look forward to take our exemplary relationship as two close and friendly neighbors forward by looking after each other's interests, by working for each other's interests, working together for furthering our common aspirations.
State Minister of COVID Disease Control Dr. Sudarshini Fernando Pillai says that 18 million more doses of the vaccines are required for the vaccination of the remaining target groups. The State Minister added that a sum of 10 billion rupees has been identified already for purchasing the vaccines. Further, she also announced that the government has taken a policy decision to vaccinate members of the public aged between 30 to 60 years, as the majority of COVID-19 infections fall within this age group. Now, in news just in, State Minister of Production, Supply and Regulation of Pharmaceuticals, Professor Channa Jayasumana confirmed that the State Pharmaceutical Corporation has sent a purchase order for 18 million doses of Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines from India.
Sri Lanka recorded a slight decline in the number of COVID-19 infections yesterday in comparison with the past 5 days, where daily infections above 800 were recorded. Out of the 715 infections confirmed, the highest cases were reported from Colombo with 261, while 142 were recorded from the Gampa district. In addition, 61 infections were reported from Badulla, 53 from Kurunagala, 43 from Kandy, 40 from Kalutara, 24 from Gaul, 23 from Ratnapura, 14 from Polonnarva and 11 from Hambantota. Further, 8 infections were reported from Anuradhapura, 7 each from Matara and Munaragala, 6 from Matale and 5 each from Ampara and Kegol. Meanwhile, Nuvarelia and Batiklo reported 2 infections each, while a single infection was reported from Trincomalee. In the meantime, Chief of the National Operations Centre for the Prevention of COVID-19, Army Commander General Shavendra Silva confirmed that 711 infections have been detected in the island so far during the day. Meanwhile, 7 more COVID-19 related deaths were confirmed yesterday. The deceased were residents of the Kandy, Colombo, Gampa and Matara districts. What's more, yesterday's deaths also included a 32-year-old doctor, Gayan Dantanarayana, who became the first Sri Lankan medical professional to succumb to COVID-19. In another development, founder of the Neville Fernando Teaching Hospital, Dr. Neville Fernando, has tested positive for COVID-19. He is currently being treated at the intensive care unit of the Infectious Diseases Hospital in Mulleriava. Meanwhile, in an update on the country's vaccination drive, a total of 23,217 frontline health workers were inoculated with the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine yesterday, increasing the country's total to 118,767 by the end of yesterday. In the meantime, editor of the Government Medical Officers Association, Dr. Haritha Aludge, says that major side effects of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine are at a minimum.
During the last few days, we observed several minor side effects due to this vaccine. For example, the mild fever, body aches, joint aches. The majority of the health staff which were vaccinated are complaining some sort of difficulties which are of temporary nature. With a simple 2 paracetamol tablets, most of these symptoms will vanish, and therefore we hope that the other major adverse effects like severe anaphylaxis reactions, severe allergic reactions, severe injection site reaction, those are very rare in this AstraZeneca vaccine. What we gathered from the international literature also is that the study report clearly shows that AstraZeneca is having a least number of side effects. The vaccine will be imported to Sri Lanka to vaccinate the common people also with the NMR approval and with some sort of a WHO recommendation, so that the community will be protected in the future with the vaccination. This should be imported quickly without further delay, because we are expecting to prevent deaths and also the complications from this vaccination. And with the high efficacy, we expect that herd immunity and the community will be protected.
Meanwhile, State Minister of Primary Healthcare, Epidemics and COVID-19 Disease Control, Dr. Sudarshini Fernandopulla, says that the government has taken a policy decision to vaccinate all people between the ages of 30 and 60, due to this age group comprising the majority of current COVID-19 infections.
We are in the process of purchasing vaccines to give to the entire population. Under the COVAX facility, WHO has agreed to provide us with 20% of the requirement, which comes to around 42 lakhs of the people. But of course, doses it will be 84 lakhs. And the government also has taken a decision to vaccinate people aged 30 to 60 years, because looking at our Sri Lankan data, of the total persons infected with COVID, 10% are above the age of 60, but the majority belong to the age groups of between 30 to 60. So therefore, policy decision has been taken while giving priority to those above 60 years to vaccinate the population between 30 to 60. We will need about 180 lakhs of doses, which comes to about 10 billion rupees. So the government has already identified funds to purchase Oxford AstraZeneca from Serum Institute.
In other developments, the total number of COVID-19 recoveries in Sri Lanka increased to 59,883 after a further 840 patients were discharged today. With that, the total number of active cases now stands at 6,196.
All preparations have been put in place to hold the 73rd Independence Day celebrations tomorrow in strict adherence to health and safety protocols to prevent any spread of COVID-19. With that, the final rehearsals worked off today at Independence Square. In the meantime, Army Commander General Shavendra Silva says that all military personnel participating in the parade have been kept within a COVID-19 bubble as a precaution. As Sri Lanka's 73rd Independence Day dawns tomorrow, arrangements have been made to hold the celebrations in a modest and dignified manner. Today, the final rehearsals were seen being held in preparation for the big day tomorrow at Independence Square.
අපි ජෛව බුබුල ක්‍රමයක් යටතේ හමුදාවේ නිලධාරීන් සෙසුන්ඩයන් මේකට සම්බන්ධ වෙන බටපිරිස් තබාගෙන කිසිදු ආකාරයෙන් කොවිඩ් ඔවුන් තුල පැතිර නොවන ආකාරයට රැකබලාගෙන තමයි අපි මේ තත්ත්වය මේව පෙළපාලිය කරන්න අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ. කිසිම තහනමක් නැහැ. නමුත් ඒ ස්ථානය ඔබ දන්නවා පවත්වන ස්ථානයේ ගොඩාක් පිරිස් වලට හැසිරෙන්න හැකියාවක් නැහැ. නමුත් කිසිම තහනමක් ඇති කරලා නැහැ.
In the meantime, a special traffic system will be implemented in the vicinity of Independence Square tomorrow from 4 a.m. to 1 p.m. due to the Independence Day celebrations.
හෙට දිනේ උදෑසන 4 සිට දහවල් 1 දක්වා කාලය තුල වාහන ගමනාගමනය එම ප්‍රදේශවල සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම සීමා වෙනවා. විශේෂයෙන්ම නෙළුම් පොකුණ වටරවුමෙන් ඉදිරියට නිදහස් මාවත දෙසට ගමන් කරන වාහන සීමා කරනවා. ඒ වගේම පුස්තකාල වටරවුම ග්ලාස් හවුස් හරහා නිදහස් මාවතට පැමිණෙන වාහනත් සීමා වෙනවා. මේ නිසා අනිවාර්යෙන්ම ඒ මාර්ග හරහා ගමන් කරන අය විකල්ප මාර්ග තෝරාගත යුතුයි. මීට අමතරව නිදහස් චතුරස්‍රය නිදහස් මාවත අවට ප්‍රදේශයේ මාර්ගවල වාහන ගමනාගමනය සීමා වීමට නියමිතව තිබෙනවා.
Welcome back. In your business news, the Department of Import and Export Control today issued a statement preventing the implementation of the extraordinary Gazette notification issued by the Prime Minister yesterday, relaxing the import ban on ceramic products. In this backdrop, Managing Director of Lanka Tiles, Mahendra Jayasekara, calls the suspension of the Gazette's implementation confusing, while calling on the government to return to pre-2015 duty structures to provide a competitive and a level playing field for local manufacturers and importers.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, in his capacity as the Minister of Finance, issued an extraordinary Gazette notification yesterday, relaxing the import restrictions on tiles and ceramic products. However, less than 24 hours after the Gazette was issued, the Department of Import and Export Control has issued new instructions for the Sri Lanka Customs and all commercial banks to suspend the implementation of the Gazette until further notice. The government moved to restrict imports in a bid to control pressure on the rupee. Following the restrictions, local manufacturers were unable to meet the demand for ceramic products, which resulted in a market price hike. Meanwhile, speaking to AdaDerana, Managing Director of Lanka Tiles, Mahendra Jayasekara, says that the suspension of the Gazette has created some market confusion.
Before 2020, local manufacturers of tiles and sanitaryware were in a very precarious position, and it was for several years. They had a massive build-up of stocks. Most of the manufacturers had 8 to 10 months of stocks building up in their inventory. With the consequent ban on import of tiles and sanitaryware by the government, these manufacturers were in a position to sell down their inventory. But now there are complaints that the prices have gone up and there are product shortages. Last night, the government issued a Gazette extraordinary lifting the ban on imports. Then this morning, the government issued another circular cancelling that previous Gazette. Now there is confusion in the market. The problem is the duty that will be levied on the imported products when the import ban is lifted. Prior to 2020, there was a certain duty structure. Under that duty structure, the local manufacturers of both tiles and sanitaryware were in a position to compete very well with the imported products. But duty progressively came down over the years. And what happened was, in 2020 budget, the government brought down the import duty on both tiles and sanitaryware even further. Under the present duty structure, if the government lifts the ban on imported items, the local manufacturers will fall from frying pan to fire. Because as I speak, the local manufacturers are planning to expand capacity and some manufacturers have committed to expand capacity. So the signal that should go to the market is that there will be a proper level playing field for both local manufacturers and also the importers. So what we are submitting to the government is that they should go back to pre-2015 duty structure, and that was a very competitive duty structure.
Now here's an update on the Colombo Bourse. The all-share price index gained 2.99% or 239 rather 0.18 points to close at 8,244.50, while the S&P SL 20 index of more liquid stocks gained 3.33% or 106.07 points to end at 3,293.45. Market turnover for the day was 6.2 billion rupees. Meanwhile, the rupee closed slightly firmer at around 193 to 194 rupees against the US dollar today, after closing at 194 to 196 rupees yesterday. Now let's take a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining. I'm Shanella Fernando. Have a good night.